Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Monday, August the 10th, 2020. On this edition of the Politicrat podcast, the economy and the con job of the Republicans and Donald Trump, plus the executive order that Trump signed this past weekend that is unconstitutional, and analysis of what he did, what it means, and what will be done about it. Plus, 2 more states in the voter information series. That's all coming up next. Welcome back. On Sunday on State of the Union on CNN, Dana Bash was sitting in for Jake Tapper, and she interviewed Larry Kudlow, who is billed as an economic advisor in Donald Trump's administration. I will get into detail about Larry Kudlow in a few moments. But this interview was unreal, absolutely unreal. And at first, when I watched it, I was thinking, why isn't Dana Bash doing a hard enough job of pushing back? I mean, she did in some ways, but in others she didn't. And I'll be playing portions of that interview in just a few moments. But Larry Kudlow has no business being anywhere near economics. I'll just say that to start with. And I'll talk about him, as I said, in a few minutes. But that's what I'll say about Larry Kudlow. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be blunt about this, and I know that some people may object to it. This guy is a cokehead. This guy is a drunk. When you listen to him, you will hear how he sounds. And you need not have had any experience with being drunk or being an alcoholic to know that this guy is an absolute drunk. He's had problems with alcohol and drugs, cocaine. This guy doesn't have any experience at all being an economist. He's not an economist. He doesn't have any degree in economics whatsoever. He has no MBA. He has nothing. The only thing he has, rather, is a BA in history. A BA in history. And this guy was once the director of the National Economic Council. This guy is now the so-called senior economic advisor in Trump's administration. This guy has said that there is no systemic racism in America. This guy has said that, this virus, we've got it well contained, it's under control, the coronavirus, we've got it pretty much airtight and contained. This guy is a guy who has been described by authors as being consistently wrong. In their book, Super Forecasting, the author, Philip Tetlock, he is a University of Pennsylvania political scientist, and Dan Gardner referred to Larry Kudlow as someone who is consistently wrong. That's quote. That was a quote. That's a quote. Consistently wrong. And they kind of went through this whole record of everything that Kudlow says as a pundit, because he was on CNBC a lot. He is a media personality. And he's been in Republican administrations before. He's a big-time tax cut guy. He loves deregulation. And he's been wrong about everything. This guy completely gets it wrong all the time. And yet he, of course, is going to be in an administration that is completely corrupt and criminal and deliberately gets things wrong and doesn't lead because it doesn't have leaders in it. It has a bunch of criminals and buffoons and people with no experience running things because they want to destroy things. They don't want to lead. So Dana Bash interviews Larry Kudlow in his trademark alcoholic drunkenness. He wallows on, does Kudlow, about a bunch of nonsense. And this is all in response to, on Saturday, Donald Trump signing an executive order where he declares that, we're going to give $400 of unemployment benefits to everybody in the country. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do a payroll tax cut, which is really, when you think about it, if you really, really think about it, a payroll tax cut is what? Social Security and Medicare being cut. But this interview that Dana Bash does, she broaches these subjects with Larry Kudlow. And I want you to listen. And I'm going to be doing some interrupting because I need to put in information that gives you the fuller and most complete picture of everything. I will give you facts. So right now, here is a portion, the first portion. It's about, I don't know how many minutes it is, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. I'm not exactly sure. But this is the portion of the interview where Dana Bash is asking Larry Kudlow about this executive order, which, by the way, is flatly unconstitutional. This is Donald Trump going around Congress. He has no power to do this. So he's violating the Constitution yet again. With an executive order that has no force or effect, Congress are the ones that are the ones who have the power of the purse. Donald Trump is not in any position to do this. And what this is all about is a political stunt. That's what this is. This is all about a nod and genuflection to his base to make it appear that he is doing something. When in reality, if you examine the fine print, which of course his supporters won't do, and quite frankly, people who aren't supporting him aren't going to have the time to do. When you examine that fine print, you'll find that it's a complete house of cards. That house that he's building, that wall that he's building, is a complete nothing. This executive order is a complete sham, like that sham trial that Mitch McConnell was orchestrating. So here is this portion of the interview that Dana Bash did yesterday with Larry Kudlow. Listen to this.
One quick other question about this apparent unemployment plan. We've talked to experts about this who say that even if this did happen, that it could take months to get this new system up and running. You agree with that?
No, I don't. The Labor Department, working with the states believe it can happen much faster than that. Mind you, all the federal money we have been putting in was running through the state systems. So those systems, which needed some reform and needed some updating, to be sure, those systems are in much better shape today than they were 3 or 4 months ago.
Checks?
I don't want to be specific because you might hold me to it, as you should, but I think it's going to be in a couple of weeks, and I think it's going to come to about $1,200 per person. That's a huge wage increase.
You keep saying $1,200 per person. Are you talking about in addition to the unemployment that they're already getting?
Oh, no.
Where does that number
that's
come
the
from?
Payroll. I beg your pardon. The $1,200 will come from the payroll tax deferral.
Okay, we're going to get to that. Okay,
this,
all right, because there's a lot of numbers here, and it's a little confusing. I'm going to get to payroll tax in a minute. Go ahead.
It should be $800. I beg your pardon. It should be $800 for the unemployment.
800 or 400?
No, it should be $800. If the states step up, we're prepared to match. That should come out $400 federal, $400 states.
Okay, we'll move on because I think that's not what the president said, and it's a bit confusing. And I think the fact that it's not entirely known is very telling. I want to talk about evictions, Mr. Kudlow, because the president claimed that he's protecting Americans from eviction, but that's not what this document says. It says that agencies should consider whether halting eviction stops the spread of COVID, and tells Treasury to identify money to help renters and to promote their ability to avoid eviction. This is not a freeze on evictions. This is a memo asking his cabinet to study it, right?
Well, it gives the health department, it gives Health Secretary Alex Azar and the CDC a lot of power. If they are concerned about community spread, for example, they will trigger actions that will prevent evictions. And I think in most cases, fortunately, we did not have much forbearance and eviction from the first CARES period, the last 3-4 months.
But if I got an eviction notice and I listened to what the president said yesterday, I think I am not going to be evicted. But that's not what this executive order actually says. Do you agree with that?
Well, no, not exactly, because, again, the health secretary has the authority, working with the CDC, to declare it an emergency. And therefore, there will be no eviction.
Has the authority,
and please don't forget.
Yes or no, does this freeze evictions, prevent evictions, period, full stop, as the president said yesterday?
It will. It absolutely will. All that has to happen, we're setting up a process, a mechanism, okay? I can't predict the future altogether. All the federally financed single families and multifamilies will be covered, as they have been. With respect to the additional population, again, if HHS declares emergencies, then evictions will be stopped. Look,
okay, I just want you to know, in this, and I know you've seen it, it uses words like consider, identify, promote, review. There's nothing that actually says a landlord cannot evict a tenant. But let's move on, because I really want to talk to you about the payroll tax cut.
Like I said, this is smoke and mirrors. It's completely smoke and mirrors. It is a whole lot of nothing. It's a complete house of cards, this executive order. It's unconstitutional first and foremost. And any court, which is what Donald Trump is counting on, he's hoping that a court that's stacked with his federal judges, which he has now put over 200 federal judges on the bench, who are all, many of them, most of them under 30, certainly under 40. He will hope that they rise to the occasion and back him. Oh, let it get tied up in the courts. But meanwhile, it gets tied up in the courts and you don't get your benefits. That's number one. Number two, he's asking, and Larry Kudlow talks about this in that portion of the interview, he's saying in this so-called executive order, this farce of an order, it's a joke, that the states have to kick in $100. The states don't have the money. They are cash-strapped due to this pandemic. Oh, well, the states have got to pony up 25% of this, otherwise it won't work. I mean, it wouldn't work anyway. The states don't have the money. And then you hear Larry Kudlow. He doesn't even know what the number is. Oh, well, it's $1,200. No, it's $400. No, if the states step up. No, it's $800. No, the states have to put in $100. Oh, no. They've got to put in $400. Oh, no. The feds put in $300 and the states put in $100. This guy has no idea what he's talking about, or he's deliberately confusing you, or both. And I think it's both. And the reason why he has no idea is because there is no plan. But there is a plan. And that plan is to completely make the American public destitute. You have food lines all across this country, and the media needs to show them more often than they do. There are millions of people in this country now, not just with food insecurity. They are hungry. And hunger has always been a staple of the United States. But, as long as it was those brown people, those black people, nobody gave a rat's ass. But now that there's millions of white people, and they're poor white people who were in this situation prior to this pandemic, now that you've got middle class white people in America going through this, everybody's talking about it. And what is so insidious is that even the media isn't talking about it as much as I think they should. We have a situation now, and no one wants to say it, but this is the Republican Great Depression Part 2. And you're going to hear some sound in a few minutes about this from an actual economist. But Larry Kudlow is never to be trusted, which is why he was hired in the first place. This guy has no economic experience. He is not an economist. He has no background in economy at all. None. He has no experience in it. He may have sat on as a director of the National Economic Council, but so what? That's not the same thing as being an economist. He is not Paul Krugman, for example, someone who knows the economy, someone who's written about it, someone who's had this broad experience as an economist. And Larry Kudlow is a joke, just like everybody else in this administration. He is consistently wrong, as I pointed out. And this guy doesn't know up from down. And this is your guy who is supposedly is the economic advisor. And he's been wrong all the time throughout his whole career in front of the cameras. He's been wrong. Absolutely wrong. Evictions, evictions. This is going to happen. This is happening. The moratorium's over. This executive order does not prevent evictions. It just doesn't. Oh, we'll look into it. We'll see. That is not prevention. If you have a cut on your finger and I'm a doctor, and then I'm asked by you, well, can you help me? And can you just take care of this really deep cut for me? Can you do something about this? And I tell you as a doctor that, well, I'll look into it. And I just do it. I just look at it. I look into it. I look into that cut, that deep cut in your finger. But I don't do anything about it. If I'm looking into it, that doesn't mean a thing. What you would want to hear from me as your doctor would be, I'm going to stitch that up. I'm going to fix that. And this executive order is a complete farce. And it is also and this is the key thing that's not getting a lot of attention or as much as it should. This is a violation of separation of powers. That's the thing to keep in mind here. This guy is showing you, again, how tyrannical he is, how much of a dictator he is. This is why you have to vote. This is why you have to take this seriously. This is why I did the episode yesterday on Joe Biden not being the sure thing despite all these polls. You have to put in the work now. This executive order was conveniently done on a Saturday. If this was going to be so good, right? And I get it. People are still indoors. People are still reluctant to leave, despite those folks in Sturgis, South Carolina, 250,000 of them, going to a motorcycle convention, motorcycle parade, and all that, with no masks. Great. What could possibly go wrong in South Dakota again? But this executive order was done on a Saturday for a reason. And it was all an orchestration of a reality TV show. You know, this is the guy that walked out of the press conference on Saturday after he signed this ridiculously phony and dangerous at the same time executive order that has no force or effect. It doesn't do anything. It is a empty bouquet to his base. So they can say in some kind of useless argument, oh, well, he's doing something. That Congress didn't do anything. Give me a break. They were negotiating for a week. They're going to be negotiating again. They're negotiating now, as far as I know. And that will continue. This is just ridiculous, folks. This is ridiculous. And he did sign this on a Saturday. If this thing was really an important thing, he would have signed it during the week. He would have done it on Monday. He would have done it on Tuesday or Wednesday, the first 2 or 3 days of a week, so that gets maximum carry in the news cycle. But he did it on a Saturday. And did it at his Bedminster golf course, mingling the government operation with his own private business, which we know is not something that the Constitution is approving of. Let's put it that way. Certainly an unconstitutional thing. He's supposed to divest his businesses. He's supposed to divest any earnings and any entanglement with his business. Every other president has done that except this clown. This dictator. And then he's got this cheering horde of Trump fans who are donors. These are the people that pay him $1 million to be on his golf course. $1 million a year or whatever the heck it is. You got these rich white people cheering him while he's having his press conference, the same way that there were cheers during the very first press conference or the very first public statements he made after the inauguration in 2017, that Saturday when he went to the CIA building. And you had in the first 2 rows people cheering. Those are Trump people. Those are people he brought in or paid off to cheer for him, which is something you never have at the CIA. You don't have people cheering when a chief executive walks in and gives a speech to the CIA. He had the first 2 rows were his people cheering, applauding. It's really pathetic and disgusting. And Paula Reed of CBS, and it's so interesting because, of course, on Saturday morning in the podcast I did that I released, I was talking about Paula Reed being a reporter who asks the tough questions, who rarely gets called on or almost doesn't. And I said, well, maybe she does get called on, but not as often. And I talked about Yamiche, and I talked about Caitlin Collins. And each of them, and Weijia Zhang from CBS News as well. I talked about all of these individuals, and each of these women asked the questions that most of these journalists just don't ask. Most of these reporters just aren't tough enough. And those particular reporters I just mentioned ask the tough questions. They're not even that tough, quite frankly. Those are the questions you should be asking. The point is they hold Trump's feet to the fire. And on a number of occasions when one of these particular women have asked him a question, He can't deal with it, and he walks out of the press conference. It happened again on Saturday, after he signed this ridiculous order, and he had his yahoos, the rich ones, cheering him. And Paula Reed said, wait a minute, the Veterans Act, I forgot the exact name of it, the Veterans Act that you talked about, that you said that you put into law, that you signed, was signed in 2014 by President Obama. This is a false statement, sir. I mean, Paula Reed actually said to him, this is a false statement, sir. Which is as close as you can get to saying, you are lying. And I am shocked and disappointed, maybe not surprised though, that not one of these reporters has said, that's a lie, that's just not true. Maybe someone has, I don't know. This guy has lied over 22,000 times in 3.5 years in the White House. And when Paula Reed, and you don't think someone should have called him a liar by now in the press? And I'm not talking about the people who are on TV doing their shows, their opinion shows. I'm talking about one of these White House press correspondents. I know they're not going to do that, but at least Paula Reed did so. And Paula Reed has asked him questions before, and he's walked out. Caitlin Collins asked him a question a week or two ago, and he walked out of that press conference. I believe Weijia Zhang or Yamish asked him a question back in July, and he walked out of that. That was in the Rose Garden, and he walked out of that press conference. It was either in June or July. This guy is a misogynist. He cannot deal with when a woman asks him a question. He cannot deal with when a female reporter who has every right to be there, is a reporter, is credentialed, is recognized, has the experience. He cannot deal with when a female reporter says to him, what's going on with this, this, and that? And he can't deal with that. He is absolutely a misogynist, and we all know that about him. But when Paula Reed said, President Obama in 2014 signed this act, he walked out of there. He couldn't deal. Thank you very much. I'll play you the audio of that. You'll hear the audio of that during this episode. This guy is absolutely pathetic. Just an absolute thin-skinned weakling. He turned tail and ran from his own press conference for the third time in less than 2 months. This guy turned tail and ran. He's supposedly the chief executive of the country, and he cannot even stand up to scrutiny. And especially when a female reporter raises the most simple of questions. In fact, it was a statement. Sir, that is a false statement. You keep saying that you're the one that signed into law this Veterans Care Package, or whatever the exact terminology was. And President Obama signed it in 2014. And he did. Obama signed this in 2014. And the truth is, in addition to that truth, Trump has been lying about this for so long. Daniel Dale, the fact checker on CNN, said that it's been at least 143 times. And there's another CNN reporter that also repeats this. At least 143 different times Donald Trump has lied and said that he's the one. Oh, Trump's the one. I'm the one that signed this into law. You didn't sign it into law. You signed an additional thing to extend it or strengthen it or bolster it. But Obama was the first person to actually sign the law. And this guy is a liar. We know that. And he has this penis envy when it comes to President Barack Obama. And he's also racist, is Donald Trump. We all know that. And a misogynist, as we all know those things about him. Malignant narcissist with power. All that is such a toxic combination, all of those things. But that's the background of what happened on Saturday. And Larry Kudlow is just absolutely way out of his depth. He has no idea what he's talking about. And he's lying, and he's confusing you, he's gaslighting you. But when I come back, I'm going to actually play more of the interview. This time, with some sound from the interview, and then some very important audio that you will not want to miss. Next.
Go around Congress and decide how much.
You hear the word obstruction? They've obstructed. Congress has obstructed. The Democrats have obstructed people from getting desperately needed money. Go ahead, please, right here.
President, I mean, why do you keep saying that you passed veterans' choice? Veterans' choice. It was passed in 2014.
Okay, excuse me. Go ahead, please.
But it is a false statement, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.
And we've just seen the president saying that let the Democrats do what they want legally. That's not very good politics for Democrats to try to take money away from people, accusing them of obstruction. Harry Littman is still with us. Harry.
Yeah, that was the statement. I hope you were able to hear it. Paula Reed, you may have heard her there saying that is a false statement, sir. Veterans' choice was the thing I was trying to remember. It was passed in 2014. She didn't even mention President Obama's name because, we can't do that. I'm not, but, because that would set him off. And he walks off. He literally walks off the podium and leaves. And you heard Andrea Mitchell there on MSNBC. And she actually did an eye roll. She did. I put this on my Twitter page at the Popcorn REEL on Saturday, August the 8th. Look in the timeline there. You can find it anywhere. The video, and it's just priceless. Because Donald Trump, again, is lying. Oh, the Democrats don't want you to get benefits. The Democrats are the ones that were at the table fighting. And Donald Trump was nowhere near the negotiating table. See, this is a complete show and a joke. It's a sham from Trump. He was never in the negotiations. Oh, I want you to get these benefits. He was never in the negotiations. Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican, was never in the negotiations. Never, not once. It was Mark Meadows and Steve Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Those were the four main participants. Mnuchin is the Treasury Secretary for Trump. Mark Meadows is the White House Chief of Staff. He's been the bulldog. He's been the one that's obstructing everything. Mark Meadows, a former Republican congressman. And then you have Chuck Schumer, the Democratic senator, and you've got Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, and the Democrat as well. Those were the four main people in the negotiation room. And there were articles coming out over the weekend about Mark Meadows obstructing everything. There was no interest by the Republicans. Mitch McConnell has basically hightailed it out of Washington, D.C. You've not heard from him. At least I've not heard from him as of this podcast episode on this Monday. I've not heard a word from him over the last few days about this. He was never in the negotiation room. Never. He's got an election that he's got to worry about, but my goodness me, if you'd want to do something about this, wouldn't you want to get involved? Kentucky is almost dead last in every category when it comes to healthcare and economics. Why on earth are voters in Kentucky continuing to vote in a failed senator when he doesn't do anything for you? Please, please, please vote for Amy McGrath. Please. Mitch McConnell has been in the Senate for 35 years now? Or whatever it is. I mean, really? Come on, folks. Don't you think you deserve better than someone who lies and cheats and steals from under your nose and steals from your state and has scandals? Is that what you love? You like that kind of baggage for your state? You're in the bottom 4 in every category? That's what you call a proud Kentucky state? A proud bluegrass state? A state that's lagging in every major category? I mean, come on, folks. This is just ridiculous. And whenever Donald Trump says that help is going to be rapid, it's going to be fast for Americans, just bet the other way. He means that relief is never coming. Remember, this is the guy that told you that this coronavirus would go away by April when it got warmer. It is red hot summer right now in the United States, and this virus is escalating 4 months after Donald Trump was saying or had said, oh, it will go away by April. I don't think so. And you know so. That this virus is killing people. This virus has now is responsible for over 165,000 lives lost. And quite frankly, Donald Trump is the major cause of it. And you have a situation now where over 5 million cases have occurred of infection in this country. And I think it's double that. These are conservative estimates. All these figures you're hearing from Johns Hopkins, as Anthony Fauci, Dr. Fauci said several months ago, that the rates of infection and the rates of death, the figures could be up to 24 times higher than what we are seeing. I mean, that is something that you really should give some real thought to, and that should send shivers down your spine. Here's another piece of audio before I get back to the Larry Kudlow debacle on Dana Bash's show. Let me get to this clip here from Kristen Holmes. She is the White House correspondent on CNN. She normally does the weekends, covering the White House on the weekends. So does Jeremy Diamond. He does a lot of that too. But Kristen Holmes here, listen to this. This is about Veterans Choice. Again, this is Kristen Holmes from Bridgewater, New Jersey, on Saturday on CNN. Just listen to what she has to say here.
But he did not put this veterans' choice into law. And this is something he has said, according to our fact checker, more than 140 times that this is his bill, his writings and putting out there. So he was pressed on this issue, why he keeps saying this, and eventually he stormed out, as we have seen him do in the past.
Yeah, that's right. According to Daniel Dale, CNN's fact checker, it's at least the 143rd time the president has repeated that falsehood, and he almost always phrases it the exact same way, saying that they've been trying to get it done for decades and decades, and no president has been able to do it. It was made into law in 2014. Kristen Holmes, traveling with the president near Bedminster, New Jersey. Thanks so much.
That was Boris Sanchez, the anchor, over the weekend on CNN. I mean, this is just a joke. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. You know that. And as I said, Daniel Dale, the fact checker on CNN, has said Donald Trump has lied about this veterans' choice. Oh, I did veterans' choice. No other president was able to do that. I'm the first one to do it. And that's a lie. And he's lied 143 times about that alone. That's disgusting. And anybody who likes to be lied to, and there are lots of people, lie to me. It's like Fleetwood Mac's song, Tell Me Lies. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. It's a good song. I mean, I like Fleetwood. I'm a big fan of, I love Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks and Christy McVie, and you got Mick Fleetwood, and you used to have Lindsey Buckingham until a couple of years ago or so when there was a big row and he split, or he was forced out, or he was told to go, or whatever, what happened. He had to be let go. But if you are someone who loves to be lied to, whether you like that Little Lies song from Fleetwood Mac or not, then you deserve what you get, right? If you love to live in a fantasy world, a fictionalized world, so that you can feel comfortable and you can cope with the world around you by having a parallel or alternate universe that you love to live in, you have a media company like CNN booking people that they have no right booking. Stop booking these clowns who say that the earth is flat. Stop presenting a debate where there is none. And that's what happened on CNN. It was just strange. They put on this guy who is a biker for Trump person, and Boris Sanchez just had a whale of a time with that. You shouldn't have him on in the first place, Boris. And rather, it's not his control. It's not Boris. It's the producers and the director of CNN who directs the program and who make these decisions to book these people and present a debate where there is none. Coronavirus is killing people. And that's the end of it. We have all the evidence, doctors, scientists, patients, people who've lost loved ones. We don't need to have some conspiracy whack job on television telling us things. Who cares if you know that the sun shines in the world somewhere? Why bring on somebody that says the sun never shines anywhere? If you've seen the sun in your life, why are television networks going to bring on somebody who is going to be up there saying the sun has never ever shined before, ever in the history of humankind? Why are you going to do that? That's what CNN and these other networks are doing in this election year now. They're beginning to put all these Trump people on who just lie through their teeth. And I'm all for bringing on someone of an opposing viewpoint. But I am not for bringing on someone to a network who's going to just sit there and lie. Just everything is a lie. Then don't put them on. And then you've got to spend 10 minutes cleaning up their lies with the actual truth and facts. And that's 10 minutes of wasted time, which means it's 20 minutes that you shouldn't have wasted on nonsense. That means you shouldn't have booked these people. If you are a network, then behave like one. Do not behave like a tabloid candy shop. But I know that has already passed. It's fallen on deaf ears. It's too late for that. But you get it. You heard from Kristen Holmes. There is no such thing as Trump is the one who signed veterans' choice into law. He didn't. President Barack Obama did in 2014. And we will put that to bed now. I promise you, when I come back, another portion of this interview with Larry Kudlow. Good grief. Welcome back. So, You know, I want to play you a bit more of this interview that Dana Bash did yesterday on State of the Union with Larry Kudlow. And this is just absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to also interrupt it. So here we go now with that interview.
Is another part of what the president talked about. Let's start with the fact that it doesn't affect 16 million Americans who are currently unemployed and aren't on a payroll to tax, right? Let's start there. And I also want to talk about what you said in 2011. You wrote that a payroll tax cut is a, quote, very weak need economic stimulant and a lackluster job creator. So were you wrong then, or are you wrong now?
Now, look, all I was saying then is there's stronger tax cut measures that would have bigger effects throughout the economy. But, you know, when I said that, you couldn't foresee what's happened with the virus and COVID. You just couldn't foresee that. Now, look.
Stop. Nobody could have foreseen what was going to happen with the virus and this pandemic. Nobody could have foreseen it. Really? That is not true. Oh, you know, in 2011, when I wrote that, this is Larry Kudlow talking about, when I wrote that in 2011, nobody could have foreseen with the virus. Nobody could have foreseen that in 2011. Well, in 2005, somebody did foresee it. And it was none other than George W., war criminal Bush, who in November of 2005 said this.
Today I've come to talk about our nation's efforts to address this vital issue to the health and the safety of all Americans. I'm here to discuss our strategy to prevent and protect the American people from a possible outbreak.
The President's made perfectly clear that our number one priority is, in the event of a pandemic, is to save lives. The President has a plan to do just that.
First, we must detect outbreaks that occur anywhere in the world. Second, we must protect the American people by stockpiling vaccines and antiviral drugs and improve our ability to rapidly produce new vaccines against a pandemic strain.
We need to have a surveillance plan that allows us to identify when an incident has occurred in the world. The sooner we know, the more quickly and more adequately we can respond.
We thought it would be irresponsible not to take on the pandemic planning effort to make sure that whenever it is, under whatever president's watch, that as a nation we're better prepared because it's the right thing to do. It can't be avoided.
The pandemic is unlike other natural disasters. Outbreaks can happen simultaneously in hundreds or even thousands of locations at the same time. And unlike storms or floods, which strike in an instant and then recede, a pandemic can continue spreading destruction in repeated waves that can last for a year or more. And one day, many lives could be needlessly lost because we failed to act today.
George W. Bush, 6 years earlier, in 2005, November 1st, 2005, talking about what we must do now to be prepared to deal with a pandemic. And if we don't act, many, many lives will be lost. You heard the audio. I just played it for you. Larry Kudlow, in that clip you just heard before that, well, in 2011, there was no way we could have foreseen what would have happened with a virus. There's no way we would have known. Larry Kudlow is a liar and a kook and a fool. And he's just fundamentally dishonest in every way. People have been going on about this in government, about the pandemic, for decades. There has been war game exercises on this pandemic, on any pandemic preparedness for decades in the US government, and not just in the US, all over the world there have been drills and exercises done for decades on this. Larry Kudlow is dishonest. And I really do think that CNN should stop bringing him on the air. And while I will play you some of the rest of this to illustrate how much of a fraud he and Donald Trump and the Republicans are, I would really also concurrently like to request to the producers and bookers and directors of these programs and these networks that call themselves news networks, even though they're really now tabloid news, can you stop bringing on liars? Can you just stop bringing on people who you know are fundamentally dishonest and have got things wrong over and over and over again? They have no credibility. And if you're going to bring them on, can we have people on the air that you employ who are going to be tough with them? I mean, Dana Bash did a decent job, but she should have done a whole lot more. She should have pointed out that George W. Bush warned in 2005, 6 years before Larry Kudlow wrote this nonsense in 2011, that if the United States did not prepare properly right now for a pandemic and not prepare for a response to it, many, many lives would be lost. And look where we are now. 165 plus thousand lives. 165,000 people in the United States are dead because of this coronavirus, but really because of Donald Trump's failure, willful, deliberate neglect. He had been told about all of this in 2017. The Obama transition team war gamed this out for him. He wasn't interested. He threw the plans away in the garbage. He disbanded Obama's pandemic response team. Please don't tell me, Larry Kudlow. Don't look at me and lie. Don't lie to us. I love Fleetwood Mac's song, Little Lies. I love that song. But I am not going to stand for you or anyone else lying to me when I know, and you know, that for decades people have been warning about a pandemic. For decades. When George W. Bush, of all people, who certainly was responsible for a large loss of life in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and certainly his failures and his lack of care around 9/11/01, resulting in the lives of 3,000 people being lost in New York, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. He, in 2005, recognized that the United States had to step up, and he warned if nothing was being done, this would happen. And you heard some of his team. It's kind of this incredible thing when you go back 15 years and you see people, Republicans, who are actually sane, S-A-N-E, sane about this. Frances Townsend, the National Security Advisor at the time, you heard her voice, talking about the president is emphasizing the need to get something done. We've got to do this to protect the American people. You had Mike Leavitt as well, the Health and Human Services person. Not this clown that you've got now, Dr. Redfield. You had Mike Leavitt saying the same things. We need to get a hold of this pandemic of any kind of, we need to get a plan, and we're doing that now. They were doing this. They were actually planning. They actually put things in place, as did the Obama administration after his, to get something done and to be prepared. And then what did this guy do when he came in 2017? He got rid of it all. Actually, he got rid of it in 2018, I believe, through John Bolton, when John Bolton was the National Security Advisor. So let's scrap national security and then get rid of the pandemic response team that Obama had. Great. And he ordered John Bolton to fire and dismantle the pandemic team. And that's what John Bolton did. The room where it happened. The guy that's hawking his book but did not want to testify against Donald Trump at the impeachment sham trial. But he wants to sell his book. And people were suckered enough to buy it and make it a bestseller. Although maybe it was Republicans that bought that book. You know how they do. They buy in bulk, these conservative groups, and then make it a bestseller, even though most of the public has not been avidly banging down the doors to buy it. I'm sure they weren't buying Mary Trump's book in bulk. That was a record. 1 million copies sold in one day, in its first day. So, I'm sure they weren't buying that book in bulk. That's actual people, not some organization with billions of dollars lying around that can just throw a couple of million at, 200,000 copies of a book or 300,000 copies of a book and then try to push it to be a bestseller. I mean, how cheap is that? There should be a law against that. It's just phony baloney. But that's the point of what I'm saying about Larry Kudlow. It's all phony baloney. And when I come back, I'll play you the rest of that portion of the interview. And it's going to be, you just have to listen to it.
Now look, at this point, as I said, it would probably be worth $1,200 per worker. And in terms of the number of workers, yes, we're running somewhere around 15, 16 million unemployed, way down, I might add, thankfully. We've had a $9 million increase in jobs and a big decline in the unemployment rate to 10.2% on the Friday numbers. And we are in, I believe, a strong, self-sustaining V-shaped recovery.
Okay,
on the payroll tax,
you say that, you say that, you say that, and it's better than it was, but just remember that we're at a place right now where the unemployment rate is still at the height that it was in the Great Recession of 2009, as you well know. I mean, it's still pretty bad. 30 million Americans don't have enough to eat. On this payroll tax question.
But Dana, I want to make sure I understand that. As I've said many, many, many times, there's still plenty of hardship and there's still plenty of heartbreak in these numbers. That, by the way, is why we are driving forth with administration executive actions to provide unemployment assistance. And with respect to the payroll tax, basically we're giving 140 some odd million people who worked through this pandemic, they're heroes, we're giving them about a $1,200 wage increase after tax. And
Mr.
I think that is vitally
You say we're
important.
giving them, you say we're giving them that, but as you will know, in the Constitution, it says the power to tax is a power of the Congress of the United States. How on earth is the president unilaterally making a decision on taxes constitutional?
Well, look, it's a deferral. It's not a tax rate change. I understand it will be challenged in the courts. We'll see what happens. A lot of this, Dana, has to do with repurposing. We have a lot of extra money that has not yet been spent. That's part of the negotiations. The Supreme Court has permitted us in the past, particularly regarding the wall between the United States and Mexico, to allow repurposing of funds. And we believe the Treasury Department has the authority to suspend a tax, not permanently, but to suspend a tax
permanently, but
on
the
a temporary
president
basis.
Okay, but the president said explicitly that if he gets reelected, he will make the payroll tax cut permanent. As you well know, these funds go into and help pay for Social Security and Medicare. The president promised many times not to get Social Security and Medicare. So isn't that exactly what he would be doing here?
No, he will protect Social Security and Medicare.
How does he do that and cut payroll taxes at the same time?
Well, hang on. When he referred to permanent, I think what he was saying is that the deferral of the payroll tax to the end of the year will be made permanent. It will be forgiven. The tax is not going away. We're still going to have the Social Security tax.
He said he would do away with it if he gets reelected. It was a new campaign pledge.
But I think that he was referring doing away with it. I believe he was referring to doing away with the payback of the deferral. And I think his intent here, and it's written in the EOs very clear, that we will take any steps possible to forgive this deferral. That's what he was actually saying. We will protect Social Security.
That's what you're saying.
Medicare.
That is not what the president said at all. He said the opposite.
It's in the executive
Just real quick.
order.
Okay.
That's
not what he said. Order. People aren't reading the executive order. They're listening to this.
Well, I think he was
listening to what he said.
I think he meant the deferral would be forgiven. I think he was saying that the savings on the deferral will be permanent. He did not mean that he's eliminating the Social Security tax.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for joining me this morning. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
This is a complete dog and pony show here with Larry Kudlow. I mean, it's just pathetic. Oh, well, I don't think he was talking about cutting Social Security. Come on. Everybody knows that Donald Trump has been talking about cutting Social Security. He's been wanting to cut it. He's talked about it. He says that if he is re-elected or if he cheats again and gets in again, he will cut quote-unquote entitlements. That is a code word for Social Security and Medicare. This payroll tax in this ridiculous executive order he signed at his golf course on Saturday. This cutting of the payroll tax is cutting of Social Security and Medicare, and it's unlawful, it's unconstitutional. He's gone around Congress and he's counting on the courts to hold this up, and it's all for re-election purposes. He knows that this has no force or effect. He knows. His base knows, or maybe they don't know. And if they don't know, or what they do know, it's immaterial. They don't care. They just want to have the illusion that he is doing something. Oh, I signed this. They couldn't tell you what he signed. They couldn't tell you what's in it. You heard Dana Bash say, people aren't reading the executive order. They're watching what he says and does. They're watching this. And that's what it is. People use their eyes. They don't necessarily read, you know? I mean, yes, there are a great many Americans who crack open a book and read it. But a great many other Americans do not read. Not only because they don't have the time to, in a lot of cases, that's completely understandable, but because they don't like to read. Oh my gosh, they just look at the headline. We all do it to a degree. Some of us actually read the darn article that follows the headline, whether it's online or in a newspaper, and hardly anybody actually has a newspaper they actually hold and open anymore. It's all on your phone or on your iPad or on your Kindle or whatever. People read their books on Kindles. I mean, people still read books in their hands. I love that. I love that, opening up a book and read it. I mean, that's the way it should be, right? I'm old-fashioned. But this nonsense about, this is not about the Social Security cut, it's lies. Donald Trump has gone on record at least twice this year alone, 2020, where he said that he would look at cutting these things. And not just look at. That, in this kind of context, look at means he's going to do it. In this context. Here is, I'm going to play you this. This is just ridiculous. And this whole thing with China is a dog and pony show as well.
It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us again in Davos. We've done this before.
That's right.
I think it was a couple of years ago. Before we get started, with we're going to talk about the economy, a lot of other things. The CDC has identified a case of coronavirus in Washington State, the Wuhan strain of this. If you remember SARS, that affected GDP, travel-related effects. have you been briefed by the CDC?
I have.
Are the words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be just fine. That was January the 22nd, 2020. And listen to this.
It's going to be. Do you trust that we're going to know everything we need to know from China?
I do. I have a great relationship with President Xi. We just signed probably the biggest deal ever made.
Yes.
In terms, it certainly has the potential to be the biggest deal ever made. And it was a very interesting period of time.
Yeah, let's get into
we
that.
got it done, and no, I do. I think the relationship is very, very good.
Let's talk about Davos, because you were here.
Yeah, the relationship is very, very good. So he's talking about China. Again, this is January 22nd, 2020. That's this year. Oh, the relationship with China is very good. You know, this guy is a con artist. He is using China for re-election purposes. It's racist what he's doing with China. We know that. Oh, well, China doesn't really want him in. They'd prefer Joe Biden. Look, this is a bunch of nonsense. China's meddling. There is evidence, according to U.S. intelligence agencies, and I'm not going to get into that today. That's a separate episode because that is going to be something that I need to do some in-depth focus on so that you can understand what's going on. China and Russia are doing this. They are meddling in the election right now. I'll get to that in a subsequent episode. But this is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. And I'm going to get to the Social Security cut. But I wanted to just start off with that. That was Donald Trump this year in January dismissing coronavirus and saying, oh, this is a great relationship that we have with China. I have a great relationship with Xi. And by the way, he praised Xi a month later, in fact, 2 weeks later, at his State of the Union address on February the 4th. This is the time that he was being impeached. This is the time that he was on trial. He'd already been impeached. So this guy is an impeached president. He's been an impeached president since December the 18th, 2019. Keep that in mind. I really do want to get to this whole thing about the Social Security. I want to play this to you right now. The entitlements, quote unquote entitlements, which is a code word for Social Security and Medicare. This is what Donald Trump wants to cut. This is, again, from the same interview when he's in Davos, Switzerland. Joe Kernan is the CNBC reporter giving him softball questions and shaking, dare I ask? You'll hear that on this audio. Dare I ask you? Oh my God, really? That's the level of reporting? No wonder this country is in the mess it's in when you've got media that doesn't challenge, unlike people like Paula Reed, who have the gumption to do their actual jobs, and Yamiche and Weijia Zhang and Caitlin Collins, people who actually do their jobs, right, and do them well. And Jonathan Swan, who is getting all these kudos for an interview that David Frost and Tim Russert would have done in their sleep and would have been even much harder on him than Swan was on Trump, than Swan was, trust me. Mike Wallace would have absolutely ripped him a new one. So come on now. Listen to this. It's about a minute and a half or so, 2 minutes long. This is toward the end of the interview that Joe Kernan does with Donald Trump this year, January 22nd, 2020. Listen to this.
These people that came up with originally the light bulb and the wheel and all of these things, and he's one of our very smart people, and we want to cherish those people. That's very important. But he's done a very good job. Shocking how well, how it's come so fast. I mean, you go back a year and they were talking about the end of the company, and now all of a sudden they're talking about these great things. He's going to be building a very big plant in the United States. He has to, because we help him, so he has to help us.
Do I dare? One last question.
Go ahead.
Entitlements ever be on your plate?
At some point they will be. We have tremendous growth. We're going to have tremendous growth. This next year, it'll be toward the end of the year. The growth is going to be incredible. And at the right time, we will take a look at that. You know, that's actually the easiest of all things, if you look, because it's such a big
You're willing
percentage.
to do some of the things that you said you wouldn't do in the past, though, in terms of Medicare.
Well, we're going to look. We also have assets that we never had. I mean, we never had growth like this. We never had a consumer that was taken in through different means over $10,000 a family. We never had the kind of things that we have. Look, our country is the hottest in the world. We have the hottest economy in the world. We have the best unemployment numbers we've ever had. African American, Asian American, Hispanics are doing so incredibly, best they've ever done. Black, best they've ever done.
Yeah, black, best they've ever done. That's a bunch of lies. Again, no, you don't have the hottest economy. You have a shit economy here in the U.S., right? We don't export anything but movies to people. We don't make anything in this country. What kind of economy do we have? You've got people now in this Trump, quote-unquote, destruction administration, because that's what it is, telling kids to go back to school, telling people to go back to work. No one's going back to work in this. And if they do, they're dying or they're getting sick. Do I ask? I mean, really? Joe Kernan? I mean, that's why Joe Kernan has that interview. Because Joe Kernan is not going to raise the critical questions that need to be raised about Social Security. He's simply not going to do that. He just isn't. And you heard it. Oh, and you heard Donald Trump. Oh, we'll have to look into entitlements. Yes, we'll get into that. You can go back to an article from Business Insider, and I'll give you the date of this article to read if you think I'm just pulling video out of context. Here is an article from the very same day that interview was done with Joe Kernan. The article is January the 22nd, 2020. It's by Joseph Zabalos Roig, R-O-I-G. The article is called Trump Says Reforming Social Security and Medicare is, quote, the easiest of all things, as he appears open to cutting entitlement spending. And what do you think he did over the weekend with this illegal and unconstitutional executive order? Payroll tax, which is another word for cutting Social Security and Medicare. You get those two things as tax on your payroll check. When you go to work and you get your check, if you look at the hard copy of your check, I guess if you're a direct deposit, you probably don't take too much notice of this, but you get the pay stub, and on it will say what's taxed. And you will see Social Security tax, you will see Medicare tax. When you fill out your taxes, this stuff is all itemized. Donald Trump, this past weekend, cut those taxes out. So those taxes that you get on your paycheck, those taxes are funded into Social Security and Medicare to keep those two very important things going. You and I and everybody else who is working gets to pay in. We all pay in to Social Security and Medicare. That's what that is on our pay stubs. Those taxes are taxes that are being paid into those two programs. So that when we all retire, we will have some of that. And yes, it's not the biggest amount of money, but it is a lifeline still for many people who are retired. And it is better than nothing. And what this guy wants to do is gut it completely. And the payroll tax, which was part of this executive order that he signed on Saturday at his golf course, is exactly what will gut Social Security and Medicare. As I said to you, he said that he is looking at cutting quote-unquote entitlements. That's code for Social Security and Medicare. And Joe Kernan, in that audio I played, weakly asked him, well, you know, you said you wouldn't do that. You'd do something you said you weren't going to do with Medicare. And his voice trails off. You heard the audio. So this article by Joseph Zabalos Roig, you can read that on Business Insider. And there's links to the entire 19-minute interview of Donald Trump on CNBC. Joe Kernan did that interview. Joe Kernan, he's not going to give tough questions. He's tougher with his own colleagues. He had an argument with one of his colleagues. I think it's Andrew Ross Sorkin, a few weeks or months ago. Yeah, he's tougher with his own colleagues on his own show than he is with Donald Trump. He's never going to ask Donald Trump any tough question. Oh, we did this before in Davos. I mean, come on. He's a chummy. He's chummy with him. You can't have that kind of journalism. That's not journalism at all. So that's one reveal about Donald Trump and the fact that he wants to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. And if he's reelected, he promises he will do it. Here is more evidence of it. March of this year, during a Fox News town hall. This is a question that is asked of him. And you should just listen to this answer. It's about 2.5 minutes or so. So here is part of a Fox News town hall in March of this year, just a few months ago. This is what Donald Trump had to say to a person who's asking him a question. Listen to this.
Let's go right to Audrey. Let's go right to Audrey, who has a question for President Trump. Audrey, right here. There we go. Hi, Audrey.
Hi. Mr. President, thank you. Pennsylvania thanks you. Bucks County thanks you for everything you're doing for our country. We look at your energy and makes me get up and say, if he can do it, I can definitely get up and do everything I got to do.
Thank you very much.
I want to say Republicans have failed to come up with an alternative plan to Obamacare. How do you plan to rally the Republicans around a plan, and what would be included in that?
Thank you very much. It's a great question and very important, health care. And I think it's probably the thing that I'm most disappointed that I haven't been able to say what a good job we've done. I haven't been able to sell what a great job we've done. First of all, I got rid of the individual mandate, which was the worst part of Obamacare. That's where you paid a fortune not to pay for horrible, health care and insurance. And it had a tremendous impact. Pre-existing conditions, 100% we take care of. But we have many health care plans now where it's 60%, even 65% less expensive than Obamacare. It's better than Obamacare. And what we really have left is the carcass of Obamacare, or you could call it new health care. Because without pre-existing, without the whole thing with the individual mandate, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a much different plan. And what we'd like to do is totally kill it, but come up before we do that with something that's great. What we've done is we've really managed Obamacare, the remaining portion. We got rid of the bad part, but the remaining portion really well. And, before I got involved, what was happening with the rates on Obamacare? They were going up at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We are managing it. And I had a decision to make. This was very important. I said to my people, and we have great people, Seema, Azar, great people that are so good at it. I said, I have a little problem. Do we manage it great until we get something much better? Or do we manage it poorly and say Obamacare is horrible? And I said, we've got to do the right thing. We've got to manage it really, really good. So it's not great health care, but we're managing it fantastically. And you don't see all those stories about the rates going through the roof anymore because we know what we're doing. At the same time, we want to get you really fantastic health care. If we can win back the House, we'll be able to do that. We have to win back the House, keep the Senate, keep the White House. We'll be able to do that. Thank you.
Oh, that's just a bunch of nonsense. You didn't have... That is just such a bunch of nonsense. We have to win back the House, keep the Senate, and keep the White House. When you had the House and the Senate and the White House, namely under you, when you began your wretched reign, in the White House, you did have the Republicans controlling the House. You did have the Republicans controlling the Senate. And you had the White House. And you still didn't have a health care plan. What are you talking about? Oh, we need to get the House back. Are you kidding? You had the damn House. And you didn't have a plan for health care. except to cut and try to destroy Obamacare. You're in courts right now in Texas trying to get rid of pre-existing conditions. And then you're lying to your base. Oh, well, we're managing it. No, you're not. You're managing to try to destroy it. And you're trying to get rid of it completely in the courts, in the federal courts in Texas. See, that's the fine print that your base won't care to look at, don't care about. They just want you in there. As long as you're there, for them it's there. Oh, great. I can continue to look down on someone because he does too. And it makes me feel good because I've got an empty life that I live. And I hate people, and all I do is go around and hate. And even though, I beat my wife, even though, I'm a failure, even though I have a crappy job or next to nothing, the fact that you're in the White House, Donald, it makes me feel better about the world. The fact that you hate and I hate, it makes me feel better. That's the mentality of these individuals. Ignorant, abusive, destructive, hateful. And by the way, they don't just have to be people who aren't educated. They can also be well off and powerful. Domestic violence is not limited to people who are ignorant or who are uneducated. Domestic violence is in every walk of life and background. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because it's in the context of people who are willfully foolish and conscientiously stupid. And then some people who are just plain ignorant. This guy wants to cut Obamacare. He wants to cut, and he's trying to cut it. He wants to gut Medicare. He wants to get rid of Medicaid. He wants to cut Social Security. His budget was released, and he talked about this in his budget. I mean, why do people pretend that this is not happening? I mean, this is the joke when Larry Kudlow says to you, oh, well, he's not talking about Social Security. This guy, I mean, he's been on record, March the 6th. And come on, folks. March the 6th, Business Insider, same person, Joseph Zabalos Roig. March the 6th, 2020, again, as I said, Business Insider, Joseph Zabalos Roig. Trump says he's willing to cut entitlements to shrink the $23 trillion national debt. This was at the same Fox News forum that I just played you the audio of a few minutes back. Look, I'm not going to go, but look, I'm just going to read you the quotes directly from that forum that are reflected in this Business Insider story. Trump was asked about the $23 trillion national debt on Thursday, which has continued to surge under his watch. He campaigned in 2016 on wiping it out, but has enacted laws that piled on at least $4.7 trillion more onto the national debt throughout his presidency, according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. For those of you economy meisters out there, you might want to take note of that. For those of you economistas out there who love tracking all this stuff, and it's good, you should. And for those of you who say, well, the economy is the thing that we really are concerned about here for re-election. And by the way, most Americans, yes, they're concerned about the economy, but they're concerned about this coronavirus. They're concerned about employment. I get it. They're all tied in to the economy. But Donald Trump is talking about the stock market, and he's talking about getting rid of entitlements, which are Social Security and Medicare. I continue on. During the forum, Fox News host Martha McCallum suggested to the president that, quote, if you don't cut something in entitlements, you will never really deal with the debt, end quote. Here is Donald Trump, quote, oh, we'll be cutting. He told the audience in Scranton, Pennsylvania, quote, we're also going to have growth like you've never seen before, end quote. That would be a shift from a previous campaign pledge to protect entitlement programs, which are commonly understood to include those like Social Security and Medicare. His administration had already signaled it was willing to reduce government spending on those programs. Trump's latest budget proposal called for $130 billion less to be spent on prescription drugs under Medicare and a $70 billion cut resulting from constricted eligibility rules for Social Security disability benefits, the Wall Street Journal reported. It's unlikely to become law, though. Oh, who cares about what's likely or unlikely? He is proposing it. And you do not know with these courts. Yes, I know Congress has to... Congress is the final arbiter, but you never know, right? You need the House and Senate, which means it would be unlikely to become law. But the fact is, he is wanting to cut this, and this executive order that he did on Saturday was a joke, and yet in that order, he's cutting Social Security and Medicare, and that wasn't really loudly established. I mean, Dana Bash did talk about it. And Larry Kudlow sitting there, oh, well, we're not really... he didn't mean he was cutting Social Security tax. Of course he's cutting it. These articles are all over the place. I played you the audio. Less than a day, and this is still the same Business Insider article, less than a day after the Fox News forum, Trump tweeted in defense of his record, saying he would protect both Social Security and Medicare. This is the classic bait and switch that dictators and authoritarians do. They lie, they vacillate, they change their mind. Oh no, oh yes, oh no, oh yes. But I'm going to cut it. No, I'm not. Oh, I'm going to support it. No, I'm not. Oh, I'm going to cut it. No, I'm not. That's a classic. And again, I had Ruth Ben-Ghiat on this podcast a few weeks ago now, a week or two ago. And this is what she meant. She talked about authoritarians and dictators and these so-called strongmen, and Donald Trump isn't strong at all, who are lying to you, changing their mind about something, and then changing it back in the same hour, saying you're going to cut something, then you're not going to cut it, but then you are, confusing you, designed to wear you down and exhaust you, which has worked because many millions of us are tired of this, exhausted, battered by this psychological operation. You talk about psyops in war. This is a war that Donald Trump has declared on the American public and on America, period. He wants to cut Social Security and Medicare. And this is what he does. Bait and switch, shift and change, shift and back and forth. Oh, I don't really want to cut it. Yes, I do. I don't want to cut it. Then in this ceremony, this so-called fake ceremony, this executive order of junk, he puts a payroll cut, which is really a tax cut of Social Security and Medicare. And where's that money going? It's going to his rich buddies. That's what this is. He's been trying to do this for a couple of years now, this payroll tax cut. He's trying to do it. And, we're going to have growth like you've never seen before. He's talking about his millionaire and billionaire buddies. He's not talking about the economy. There's no economy that's going to grow when you're cutting payroll tax, especially when that payroll tax is obviously Social Security and Medicare. How are you going to recycle money into an economy when you're cutting back on the few dollars that Medicare offers and that Social Security offers to retire on? How is spending going to ever get generated when you're cutting that? When you're telling people go back to work and they're not healthy? How are you going to have a robust economy like that? And I don't care that the stock market's gone up. The stock market is the representation of 30 companies if you're talking about the Dow Jones. And the S&P, Standard & Poor's 500, is 500 companies. But that is not the barometer of the economy. These deficits are a barometer of the economy. The unemployment rate is a barometer of the economy. The number of new jobs or lack thereof is a barometer. And Donald Trump is failing on all counts. And he's still going to cut Social Security and Medicare? He's doing that right now. It's an absolute scam. One of his own scams. It's just like him bankrupting his own companies. How do you bankrupt a casino and still get money from Deutsche Bank, a bank of ill repute? I guess that explains it. I've answered my own question. But this is a pathetic, pathetic human being. And he's scamming you, stealing from you, stealing from the country. And woe betide you if you give him another term in office, quite frankly. I'm saying these things to give you something to think about, because it's not presented this way, generally speaking, in the corporate news media. And there are ads that present it, but ads are, a minute or two, and they can be very powerful and compelling. But you need to have some deeper background to go with it. Which is why I'm spending this time talking about this, connecting these dots that must be connected. Because that event on Saturday at Bedminster at its golf course does not stand in isolation. And it needs to be properly interpreted, analyzed, and contextualized. An economy will not grow if you're cutting Social Security and Medicare. It's just not going to happen. This is something that's not being talked about at all by anybody. This is a tax cut for his billionaire buddies and billionaires and the rich. That's what this really is, right? This is not only a gutting of Social Security and Medicare, this ridiculous executive order, this unconstitutional executive order that goes behind the back of Congress, who has the power of the purse, as Dana Bash pointed out in her interview with Kudlow. This is a tax cut where this money is going to go to billionaires and rich people everywhere in the country. That's what this is. And he's got the nerve, Kudlow has, oh, well, if the states can pony up the other $100, and oh, maybe it's $1,200 that the Americans get. Oh, they're heroes. This guy's a millionaire himself, Kudlow. I don't know how. He's got no experience in anything meaningful. He's not an economist. How the heck is this guy telling you what you're going to get? And he doesn't even know. Well, maybe it's 800, maybe it's 1,200, maybe it's 400, maybe it's 300. Oh no, the states have got to throw in $100 when the states have no bloomin' money because they are cash strapped, running debts and deficits due to the pandemic. And the White House had, Trump had these states bidding against each other for ventilators. Remember that? Bidding against each other and against other countries. They had to go to other countries and buy their stuff. Their ventilators and PPE. And they still don't have the PPE equipment that they should be having. And that's another reason why these rates are going up. They still don't have this stuff. Donald Trump never has fully authorized this Defense Production Act. He's done it in fits and starts. He's done it selectively. He's done it in piecemeal. He has not fully unleashed that power. This guy wants to destroy the country. He hates the country. Absolutely hates the United States of America. He's allowed Putin to put bounties on the heads of American military personnel. And he has not done anything at all to stop it. Nothing. That is not somebody who cares about the United States of America. And that is not somebody who cares about the American people. He hates the American people. He hates them. Because if he didn't hate them, he wouldn't be cutting Social Security and Medicare. He hates seniors. And seniors were the ones who voted for him last time. White seniors. Why would you vote for him anyway? Especially now when the majority of these deaths are from seniors and these nursing homes dying from coronavirus. And he's trying to make an appeal to older white women in the suburbs. Give me a break. Oh, Joe Biden's America. You won't be able to survive. And in Donald Trump's administration, right now in America, people are not surviving. They're dying from coronavirus. Give me a break. This is the Orwellian BS, the Orwellian bullcrap that this administration and this wretched human being is shoveling to you. It's time to vote, folks. It really is. And believe it or not, I've got some more audio, but this time from an actual economist. Diane Swank and reporter from CNN, Kristen Holmes, coming up next.
Defended the president's actions, but struggled to clarify exactly how they will be implemented or funded. I want to go to New Jersey, to Kristen Holmes, our White House correspondent. New Jersey is where the president is at his golf resort, where he signed those executive actions. Also joining me is Diane Swank, chief economist for Grant Thornton. Welcome to you both. Kristen, let me start with you. So some Democrats and also some members of the president's own party are questioning the president's move. What are you hearing?
Well, that's right, Dana. And it's always surprising these days when someone on the Republican side criticizes President Trump. But that's exactly what Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse did last night. He put out a statement saying that these kind of executive actions were unconstitutional slop. Now, unsurprisingly, Democrats hit this almost immediately after he made these signings. At one point, Nancy Pelosi saying in a statement that they were weak and narrow and essentially ripping apart President Trump. Now, she extrapolated on that today in an interview with you, and she seized on Senator Sasse's comments. Take a listen.
Everything is left out. Our assistance to the schools, feeding the hungry, helping people who are going to be evicted. The president didn't even do a moratorium. He just did a study or look at a moratorium. So again, something's wrong. I associate myself remarks with Senator Sasse, who says they're unconstitutional slop. I think that's well. Right now, we want to address the needs of the American people as constitutional. My constitutional advisors tell me they're absurdly unconstitutional.
So a couple of things to note here. One is that Speaker Pelosi is right in the sense that this is very limited. It doesn't touch on schools. It doesn't touch on money for small businesses, things that are very important to both parties. And we should note that we spent the night on the phone last night talking to experts who said that there are large concerns about these executive actions and that there's a chance that many of the people who need these funds may never get it because of the language and the hoops that people have to go through in order to get this funding. But on the other side of this, we should point out that the reason why President Trump was issuing out these statements and signing these executive actions was because Congress couldn't come to any sort of a deal. So there is some optics here and some cleanup that needs to be done by Democrats who see him signing this. They know that people, even if the text of the actual executive actions doesn't really yield many results, they see President Trump saying, I am taking the lead on this. Now I signed these executive actions. And they're saying Congress couldn't get it done.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, this is not something you can pull the wool over people's eyes about. If you're unemployed and you don't get a check, you know that this is not true, right? And Diane, luckily we have one of those experts with us. I also spoke to Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, a Republican, who told me that they didn't know whether or not this is something they would participate in. They were going to look at it. Larry Kudlow also told me that they weren't sure how many states were going to participate. I mean, how real is this? If you are somebody sitting home who heard the president yesterday saying you're going to get $400 additional a month, it was $600, now $400, should they believe it in the short term?
I just don't see how they can. I mean, the reality is, one, the kind of bureaucracy we'd have to go through at the state and local level. One, as you mentioned, the states have to accept it and agree to it. It's not clear as well what this would do to FEMA funds. These are funds that are used for hurricanes. We're in the middle of hurricane season. To think that we would deplete those funds entirely in the next month, first of all, it wouldn't come that quickly, is sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul. This doesn't make any sense, because we're going to need those funds, especially in a crisis like this where homelessness is already on the rise and food insecurity is on the rise. We're talking about homelessness and food insecurity, the likes of which we've not seen since the Great Depression. And this doesn't fix that. And that's what's so hard about it, is that, yes, Congress needs to do something, need to do something now. And the fact that benefits have already lapsed, that's $18 billion a week that is not going into people's pockets nor into the economy. And all the research, the debates on this, all the research has shown overwhelmingly that the extra $600 a week did not deter people from taking jobs. They think much more long-term than that. And in fact, it did provide an enormous support for the economy at a critical juncture, which we're at again today. Much of the high-frequency data suggests that we plateaued in late June as people got fearful about the rise in COVID cases, and everything from dining out at restaurants to traveling to spending and going into malls. And so that's really important to understand, is this, we can get a positive third quarter just because of the high level we ended the second quarter on after an extraordinary drop, but we could be poised to go right down again into a very hard crash in the fourth quarter, which would be at the height of the second wave as well.
So real briefly, Diane, the House Speaker said to me that she's not giving up, that they have no choice but to get back to the table at some point. We'll see when that happens. But as somebody who is an economic expert and an economist, put this into terms that they should and people out there should understand about how critically important and dire it is for them to come up with a compromise on all of these issues that are intended to help people who are really suffering.
What really is life and death? We are talking about people not getting money, and currently over a third of all renters in the last week of July surveyed by the Census Department said they weren't sure they'd be able to pay rent in the months to come. The kind of homelessness, the kind of things we're talking about really is unconscionable in the United States of America, and that's what the real issue is that these are people that are really in need. And we're talking about seeding a worse crisis down the road. We've already got a higher COVID problem, which is costing our economy. To think that we would go into yet another double dip and see another surge in unemployment, which is now becoming more probable, I just can't even wrap my arms around it, because it's so devastating, and it's a real possibility at this stage of the game.
Diane Swonk, Kristen Holmes, thank you both of you for joining me. Unfortunately, it's certainly not good news we're talking about, but it's important to be discussing this and to be staying on them, especially here in Washington, as they talk about going back to the table. Let's hope they actually get back to that table. Thank you.
So Diane Swonk, you heard her, the chief economist. She's a chief economist at Grant Thornton and has been an economist for years, has expertise. So you heard Diane Swonk, the chief economist at Grant Thornton. She has been an economist for many years, and she's telling you the truth. She was clear, precise, and devastating in her analysis. She absolutely laid it out. She's worried about the mass homelessness, the evictions, everything that's going on, more unemployment. I mean, you just heard it in that audio that she was doing there with Dana Bash. I mean, this was yesterday. That was Sunday, August 9th, 2020. This is really very gravely serious. We are in the second Republican Great Depression. The first one was from 1928-29 all the way into the early 1930s, around 1932, and that resulted, of course, in a huge win for FDR, a landslide win for FDR over the Republican president at the time, Herbert Hoover, who didn't give a rat's ass about what was going on in the country. He didn't do anything to deal with the Great Depression, which is why it was called the Great Republican Depression, one of the reasons. He turned a blind eye and a deaf ear. Millions suffered. And now again here in 2020, millions are suffering. And there's a Republican in the White House who does not care about the suffering of Americans. He doesn't. Donald Trump does not care. He wants to cut, and he is cutting, Medicare and Medicaid, even though Republican-controlled states' voters are absolutely voting for Medicaid expansions like they were in Missouri just last week. That should tell you something. When you've got Republican-controlled states voting for Medicaid expansion, while the Republican in the White House is cutting Medicaid, is cutting Medicare, is cutting Social Security. Join the dots and do the math, everyone. It's pretty darn clear that Donald Trump should be voted the heck out this November, this October, this September. If you can vote in September, as you can in some states, make sure you cast him and every Republican on your ballot out. Diane Swank told you what you already know. There are millions of people on food lines waiting. They can't feed themselves, as Dana Bash said. There isn't enough food. That's Depression era. That is a depression. That's the bread lines in the 1920s. That's the bread lines in Russia of more recent years. This is a Great Depression. And I'm not just talking about the depression that you may be feeling mentally. I'm talking about also economically. And quite frankly, Joe Biden needs to get on his horse and hammer that home. And I know that some of his surrogates are, but he needs to be even harder on that. He does. He needs to be absolutely, because I get it, you're letting Donald Trump implode. But I'm sorry, you've got to remind the American public that Donald Trump has thrown us into another Great Depression. And here's what I'm going to do. And now Joe Biden has talked about Build Back Better. He's talked about bringing the American economy back to where it should be and encouraging manufacturing, and has a plan for it. It's comprehensive. It's on his website. Very comprehensive plans. Donald Trump has a comprehensive plan to destroy this country. He's done it. He's succeeded. The question is now is to whether or not you want to give him 4 more years to completely obliterate the country off the world stage. Because if you give him those 4 years, I can assure you that is what he will do. Choose wisely this November. Welcome back. It is so refreshing to hear from an actual economist, not this fake person who runs around as, oh, I'm this economic advisor, and he's never done any kind of degree in economics. He doesn't have a degree in economics. He's not an MBA. He's nothing he has a BA in history. And he gets it wrong all the time, Larry Kudlow. So it's refreshing when you hear from a Diane Swank, who is an actual economist, right? Who absolutely knows what she's talking about, has been an expert for, I'll say, decades. She has been on top of this. She knows all about the labor markets and monetary policy and structural changes. She knows all about this. She has studied this forever. She's an economist. She's an actual economist, as opposed to Larry Kudlow, who really isn't an economist at all, never has been. He's a drunk, though. He's a coke addict, though. And what he should be doing is getting treatment for his addictions. I'm not gloating about him being those things, but I sound the alarm bell because he should not be in that position. Nor should any of these people, including Donald Trump, of course. But when you lie to the American public and when CNN puts these people on, you need to have someone robust to counter them. And it took this segment that I played for you that included Kristen Holmes, the reporter for CNN, and the chief economist Diane Swonk to really, in no uncertain terms, tell you that Larry Kudlow is Larry Kudlow to crap. Let's get to the states, shall we? New Mexico and New York are the next two states, and I'm going to be pretty brief with this today. And I do have links on the line notes for these two states and their voting websites. You go to New Mexico's website, it's sos.state.n as in Nancy, m as in Marcus, .us. You click on that, or rather you go to that site, and what you will see, of course, is the smiling Secretary of State, Maggie Toulouse Oliver, on the right-hand side of the page. But above her and above the purple area there that you'll see, this purple headline, you will see a blue band going across, navy blue. It looks like midnight blue, actually. And it's all got all these categories in yellow, and one of them will say voting and elections. You click on voting and elections, and it brings you to all of the information that you will need. It's really helpful, actually. Upcoming elections, voter information portal. You click on where it says voter information portal on the left, and that brings you to voter registration information on your left-hand side. You click on voter information, voter registration information, and scroll down, and you will see something that says register to vote or update your registration. Beneath that, there will be this teal hyperlink that says click here to register or update your registration online. You click there, and away we go. You just follow the prompts, and you can vote. You can register to vote online. Right there. You can check your registration status as well. Remember to check your registration every week through the end of October. So there you go. That is really what you need to know about New Mexico and their website. It's a good website. It's got lots of information on it. I encourage you to check that out. If you are a New Mexico voter, that's where you need to go. And by the way, there is early voting in the state. The early voting begins it's roughly 28 days, actually. It's 28 days before the election. Roughly 28 days for early voting. That's when it begins. 28 days before. So count back 28 days before November the 3rd. And I guess you'd be getting, again, it'd be roughly October the 5th or 6th when early voting starts in New Mexico. The voter registration deadline for the November 3rd general election in New Mexico online, if you're doing it online, the deadline to register online is, again, 28 days before election day. So that'd be around October 5th or 6th. Make sure you contact the website, and you'll find the information for the phone numbers there. It's very, very easy to see. If you're registering in person, it's the Saturday before election day if you're doing it at the county clerk's office. But other than that, 28 days before election day. Otherwise, I would just register as soon as possible. And you can register online. It's the easiest and fastest way to do it. The deadline is 28 days before election day. So again, October 5th or 6th or so. If you want to do this by mail, you can do it. It's going to be postmarked 28 days before the election. But look, come on now. With what we know about the mail, your best bet is to do this online or drop it off in the mail yourself, or actually drop it off at your county clerk's office. That's really what you've got to do in all these states. Demand a ballot now or even go down to your county clerk's office. You can look that up online. Drive to them, whatever. If you can do that, or if you can get public transportation, if you're willing to do that, go to them in person and say, I want my ballot for November 3rd. Can I have one now, please? And if they say no, ask them when's the earliest time. Because of the stuff with the mail that's going on, the slowdown of the mail, when is the earliest time I can get this ballot? You've got to be proactive and you've got to demand this. I'm not saying you've got to be rude. That you can demand things without being rude. You know that. I know that. We all know that. So this can be done in New Mexico. And I hope that you in New Mexico who may be listening, you go ahead and do these things because we really do need to have proactive voters. A lot of this is about voter education. And there's going to be confusion, I'm sure. And that's what Trump wants. And it's going to happen, I'm sure, especially on election night, which is why you've really got to bank these votes now. The earlier you vote, the better it's going to be. Believe me. Voting by mail now is a good idea. Do it now. Send that ballot in now. Do not delay. Or, better yet, literally bring it to the office, the Board of Elections or county clerk's office in person. Bring it to them. Believe me. That is really the best way. So there you go. Now to New York. New York. The state of New York. Now if you are in New York and you are a voter there, you will definitely want to go to the following website. It's elections.ny.gov. Elections.ny.gov. You go to that site. You enter that site and voila, you get the New York State Board of Elections site. Not the most impressive site. It's a hodgepodge. It's not colorful. It's no frills. It's bare bones. But there is lots of stuff. They've crammed a lot of stuff on here. I mean, it's wow. They've got everything from New York State Board of Elections use of force policies to, oh my gosh. To needing a voter registration form, changing your address. There's so much stuff crammed on this one page. They've got election results. They've got everything here. Again, not the most picturesque and beautiful website, but it's got all the information there. And to cut to the chase on all of this, you will want to go on the left-hand side where there are a series of kind of, dark green headings in dark green boxes. And click on where it says voting information. Click on that. You are then taken to a page that says register to vote on it. And then there are a number of other headings there. And what you will find when you get to that page is that you cannot register to vote online in New York. You will have to go to find a voter registration form. On that page, you'll scroll down to where it says New York State Voter Registration Board form. If you've never voted before in New York, you must fill out one of these. There's one in English and one in Spanish. You would think they'd have more languages than that for New York, particularly in New York City, where there are a billion languages spoken. But this is New York State, but that includes New York City as well. And in any event, you need to either register in person in New York or at an agency-based voter registration center. You can request a voter registration form by mail by entering your name into their mailing list. You can call New York State's hotline. I think that's not a bad idea. 800-FOR-VOTE to request a voter application. You can do that, or you can click on the online form that they have that you can fill out online. It's a PDF that you can actually fill out on your screen, but you still got to print it out and send it in to the County Board of Elections or the appropriate place that you have to mail it to in the County Board of Elections. And they have a list of those you can find. And make sure you mail it to the right one, please. But there is no online voter registration. You cannot register to vote online in New York State. Their website does not allow for that. So that's important to know. As for checking your registration, there are voter registration deadlines and things of that nature, voting information. And I'm just trying to look and see about the actual checking of this. But in any event, you will be able to check these things. There's information that you can plug in that will ask you to enter. There's so much stuff here. I mean, it says need to change your name or address, need to look at your elected official, I think it's on that first page, need to change your name and or address, or want to find out if you are registered and where you vote. So when you go to elections.ny.gov, right, and you see the site in front of you, scroll down on that page to where it says voter information, and there are these 8 gray boxes. One of them says want to find out if you are registered and where you vote. Click on that, and then you'll be able to look up yourself on this database to see if you are still registered. So if you want to check your registration, that's what you do, and then it will take you to a place where you can enter your personal information, and then it will find you, and or not if you are not registered. So that's how you do that. The early voting in New York is October the 24th through November the 1st. 1 week. That's the early voting period for New York. New York only started early voting this year, I believe. They never had early voting before in New York. And it was this law changed earlier this year because of the pandemic that continues on, that New York decided, okay, we better do early voting here. But it's only for 1 week. And it starts on October the 24th and ends on November 1st for this general election. So I would advise you to vote early in person. I would advise you to certainly vote by mail if you can. There is a section on absentee voting. And as far as that's concerned, you need to interact with your local election office. That's really what you have to do in New York. So IDs and things like that, you won't need to show your ID if you've voted before in New York. But if you are voting in New York for the first time, you will need to show a copy of your photo ID, and I think some kind of or a utility bill or something that shows your name and address. But again, you need to contact your local county elections office in New York State. You can look that up easily. So there you go. Those are the 2 websites for the day, the 2 states for the day, New Mexico and New York. And again, I think it's important that you realize the deadlines as well. The voter registration deadline in New York, I should mention that, 25 days before Election Day. 25 days before. So you count back 25 days before November the 3rd, and you're probably talking around October the 10th or something. But look, again, you can find out the exact time that is. And I'm going to put together a comprehensive list and have it published so that you can see exactly what all of these deadlines are. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.